Welcome to the December 28th edition of Previews, and some interesting matchups tonight. I've taken a lot of flack for my fandom of the Bruins, and for the fact they did pretty well in the power rankings for the last couple of weeks. And they're doing pretty well right now, and tonight is really one of those make or breaks. So, Hudobin's starting against Holtby. Hudobin's been very good. Bruins are 20-10-5. Washington's 22-13-3. Boston's 8-1-1 in their last 10. And Washington's 6-2-2. Washington's lost 3 in a row. Boston's won 5 in a row. Pretty sure that the last win Washington had was over Boston. Washington has a very good record against the Boston Bruins. And I'm glad it's Hudobin because I think Rask would probably get eaten alive by Washington just because they're coming off of being shut out by the New York Rangers. The Washington Capitals are a hot and cold team, and I have a bad feeling that tonight they're going to start getting hot again, and it'll be at the expense of the Bruins. Wouldn't surprise me. As long as it's a close game, as long as, for instance, if this was an overtime result, if Washington wins in overtime and you take your point and you move along, the fact that Washington came in and beat Boston in Boston 5-3. It makes me a little nervous about Boston going into Washington because Washington has a good home record. And they're due for a loss. They've won 5 in a row, so they're due for a loss. Anyways, moving on. The Philadelphia Flyers are in Florida against the surprisingly hot Florida Panthers. Florida's won 3 in a row, and Philly's lost 2 in a row. Philly's now 15-13-8, and their last place, even though they're 7-2-1 in their last 10, they're last place in their division. The Florida Panthers are 15-16-5. They're 5-3-2 in their last 10. They've won the last 3, and they're not last place in their division. They're not even 6th or 7th. I think they're 5th. It shows the huge chasm between the two divisions. That the Atlantic has a Florida team that really shouldn't be in it, and yet they can talk about it. Boston's a good distance ahead of them. Boston's 10 points ahead of them, but they're closer to a playoff spot here than they would be in the Metro the Metro Division. And basically, at this point, Florida's trying to continue to build up some momentum and to gain back some respect. And if they can get to 500 and then go above it, and ask Edmonton and Montreal how hard it can be to go above 500. You can get there and fight your way there, but getting above 500, it could be tough. But they'll take their shot at it tonight. They're going for their 4th straight win, and Philly's trying to avoid their 3rd straight loss. This is the kind of game Philly's been winning lately, these road games. And Florida's a team that they should be able to beat. Philly's got enough offensive weapons. Between Elliott and Reimer, I would say Elliott's the better goaltender. Elliott, even in losses, has still been really solid. We'll see who gives first. But Reimer has been good during this 3-game winning streak for Florida. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, which is why it'll end up being like 5-4 or 6-3 or something silly like that. Speaking of silly, the Vancouver Canucks have lost a lot of games lately. They're 2-7-1 in their last 10. They've lost their last 4. 15-17-5 overall. Chicago's coming in not much better. They've lost their last 2. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10. Chicago's 17-13-5. Vancouver 15-17-5. It's Markstrom against Forsberg. The question of what happens now with Corey Crawford out starts to be answered tonight. The good news is Vancouver has problems scoring. And I know there are Canuck fans who don't like to hear me say it, but they do. With Horvat and Berchi on the shelf, they are going to have problems scoring going forward. They've had a nice long break for Christmas, but Chicago's coming in. With Anton Forsberg, they know they need to score early and often. And, for his confidence sake, Forsberg hasn't been one of the better backups in the league so far this year. And any Chicago fan will tell you that. But Markstrom in recent weeks hasn't been stellar for Vancouver either. He's had a couple good games, but we're getting into the period here where the Canucks are likely throwing in the towel for the season. The discrepancy between where they're at and where they need to get is getting larger and larger every night. And the odds of them making the playoffs are fading right now. So while I feel for the fandom and I feel for the team, I'm also looking at this and saying, well, ticket prices are going to come down. I'll be going to some Canuck games in the new year, much like I did last year towards the end of the season, because prices come down when the team isn't very good. And the Canucks right now just aren't that good. It's a little early to talk about who's going to get sold and for what, but the Blackhawks tonight can come in and make that 5 straight losses. I don't know if they will. And I say I don't know if they will because the Canucks have had a nice long rest, and the Blackhawks are wildly inconsistent. That's the only thing consistent with Chicago this year. They can go on a nice run and then just nosedive. Personally, I would be very surprised if Chicago doesn't win, though, because they need the win to stay in the race in the Central. For Vancouver, it may not be said in the locker room, and I'd be very surprised if it was, but the writing's kind of on the wall right now. Unless they go on some kind of a 10-game winning streak, which is virtually impossible with this lineup, it's basically done for them right now. Montreal. Montreal's in Tampa. So coming off of a loss to Carolina, I think there's probably worse things that could happen to your team than going to Tampa Bay after a loss, like, I don't know, going to Vegas after a loss. But the good news is, yeah, that's all I got. It's really all I got. Tampa's 9-1 in their last 10. They've won their last 2. They're 25-7-2. Montreal 16-17-4 has started to look once again like a team that can't score goals. They're 4-5-1 in their last 10. They've lost their last 2 games. Montreal is in no man's land. Do you rebuild? Do you try to sell somebody off? And anybody who says, oh, they should trade Carey Price, just go ahead and just feel free to ignore that advice. Carey Price isn't going anywhere. It's not going to happen. Unless Charlie Lindgren came in and was the next Patrick Roy, there's no way Carey Price is going anywhere. And for Montreal, it's a back-to-back. But, you know, Tampa's had a nice long layoff. Maybe they can catch them napping. Maybe they can come in and pounce on them early. The trick is, of course, if this game is tied, about the second half of the game, Tampa will start pulling away because Montreal's going to be tired from playing 2 games in 2 nights. So watch Montreal early. If they can get up early and they can get a lead, absolutely they can pull off an upset. Absolutely. And in fact, if I had to pick an upset of the night, that'd probably be it right there. It would be Montreal knocking off Tampa, because I don't see Montreal falling that far off the pace. Price is playing well, and I don't see... I mean, Tampa's a great team, but they're not as head and shoulders above the rest of the league as they were, say, a month ago. So absolutely they can have a game like, you know, against Montreal here, a lesser team coming in where maybe they let down a little bit. And maybe Montreal gets this win. Just throwing that out there. But for Tampa, that offense is deadly, that defense is deadly, and Vasilevsky's playing. He's playing for a Vezina, and he's been fortunate as well in that Crawford's hurt now, so Crawford's out of that conversation again for a while. And if Crawford doesn't play enough games, he won't get Vezina votes. And Bobrovsky started looking kind of human as well. So Vasilevsky, as long as he can stay steady, he can lock up the Vezina as early as February, really, because he's been that good, and he's been that consistent. I know there's other goaltenders who've been good, but he's been that consistently good. All right, next up is a game that it's the Battle of the Shields first off. You've got the Vegas Golden Knights against the LA Kings. And I watched Vegas last night. There's a live stream of that, of course. 5 wins in a row for Vegas. They are 24-9-2. And the Kings are 22-11-4. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10. They lost their last game, and Vegas is going to beat them. I don't know what else to say about this, man. It's Fleury against Quick. They played Subban, the backup, last night. He looked great. And now they're playing Fleury. This is a tornado going through the NHL right now, these Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm not sure how many more games they have to win before all of the naysayers quiet down. I would say probably all of them. And then they have to win them in the playoffs too, because if they go out in the first round, you're going to hear people who say, well, it was a flash in the pan, it was a lucky run, and they're done, and it won't happen again next year. That's going to get said. Not by me, but it'll get said by other people. If you haven't had a chance to catch Vegas, and if you don't have to go to bed early tonight and you're on the East Coast, by all means, catch Vegas. Vegas is fun to watch. There's so much depth. There's so many weapons. And a solid defense, fantastic coaching, and the goaltending is really good. So there really isn't a whole lot to look at with Vegas and say, well, a team will exploit this in the playoffs. Especially if they have home ice. The fact they're on the road means that the Kings have a better chance than they would in Vegas. If it was in Vegas, I'd be like, yeah, well, Vegas wins this. The Kings have an even chance because they need to win this to stay up there with Vegas and not let Vegas get away. And being at home, the Kings should have an advantage there. They should. And then again, we are 30, this will be 36 games now for Vegas. And in 35 of them, I felt like the team should have probably an advantage on Vegas, and they don't. Like last night, I felt Anaheim, yeah, they should have an advantage on Vegas. Not because Vegas is a bad team, but because Anaheim got healthy and they got Kessler back, and Anaheim should be better, and nope. Nope. That's part of the issue, too. If you have a team that's dealing with a lot of injuries, and you're like, well, once we get healthy, we'll go on a run, that doesn't always work that way. It sometimes does, but it's dangerous to say, well, we'll be better when this player comes back. It doesn't always work. Speaking of which, the Toronto Maple Leafs are in Arizona tonight. Now, we will all harken back to when this game took place in Toronto, and I got a pretty good chuckle out of Toronto losing to the Arizona Coyotes. It was a stunning defeat for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and can they do it again? Yes. Will they? Arizona's 9-25-5. Toronto's 22-14-1. Toronto's 5-5 in their last 10. They won their last game. Arizona won their last game too, but they're 2-7-1 in their last 10. I cannot see Arizona knocking off Toronto tonight. Can't see it. The Maple Leafs have too many weapons, and this team is going to remember what happened in Toronto. Last year, I praised the Maple Leafs last year for being too young and stupid to know they're supposed to lose games. And that was kind of my thing with them, was I would say they're too stupid to know they're supposed to lose this game. The Maple Leafs this year, it's different. They remember what's happened, and I really would be quite surprised if they don't come out and lay a beating on the Arizona Coyotes. Arizona's on the back half of a back-to-back too. Toronto can jump on that. And with the weapons they have and the team that Toronto has, and the fact too that Boston's passed them by virtue of having games in hand on Toronto, Toronto is aware that their standing is precarious and they don't want to fall to third place. I fully expect a big game from Toronto tonight, and a Toronto win combined with the Boston loss would make things right for Toronto Maple Leaf land. Put Boston back in third, Toronto back in second. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I'd kind of be surprised if it didn't. For Arizona, they're a plucky team. They showed it against Colorado again. They're a plucky team. They'll give you their best game from night here to night there. However, on the whole, their talent just isn't there. Their ability to sustain any kind of a run just is not there. I'd be very surprised if they win their second straight game with a win over Toronto tonight. That would be quite shocking to me, actually. Now, the battle for third place in the Pacific is joined tonight by the Calgary Flames, or the Flames basically hand third place to San Jose. Calgary has to win this one, and they have to win it in regulation. And they have to win it in San Jose. 18-15-3 Calgary against 19-11-4 San Jose. San Jose's 5-3-2 in their last 10. Calgary's 4-4-2. Flames lost their last game. San Jose's won their last two. The Flames have been remarkably flat in terms of being 500 for roughly a month. And meanwhile, San Jose is starting to show signs of getting better. And Vegas and the Kings haven't shown signs of falling back. So what's happening is Calgary is already seeing their playoff hopes starting to fade a little bit. And it's strange because other than scoring depth, And I think they'll miss any blue liner who gets hurt, because I don't think their depth on the blue line is where they're going to want it. And here's Rittich in net. I don't put any of this on Rittich. It'll be Rittich against Jones, but I'd be very surprised if San Jose doesn't win this game tonight. Be very surprised. The Flames, I'm not sure how you fix what's going on in Calgary. The fact that they're having problems getting over that hump, but they are definitely having problems getting over it, and I do wonder where things are headed for them. If the Flames lose this one in regulation tonight, they have 39 points. That'd be 44 points for San Jose, and pretty sure the Sharks have games in hand on Calgary. That's not good. And I don't know how you fix it. You're not going to trade off any of the youngsters. You're not going to trade off any of the young core. But it's weird because this happens every offseason. Every offseason you'll see Flames and Oilers fans arguing over which team's better. And then, last year they were both in the playoffs, but there's been a number of seasons where they're arguing amongst themselves and then they both miss the playoffs. And I've always wondered, how does that work? If you both miss the playoffs, bragging rights do not belong to either team. And the Flames right now are in danger of falling out of relevance and not being a contender at all for playoff position. They have to beat San Jose tonight. For the Sharks, yeah, they want to put the screws to Calgary. They want to put this to bed. They want to make sure that they nail down this third spot. They know that Anaheim's coming. They know Anaheim is capable of catching them. Despite what happened against Vegas last night, I put that on Vegas being that good rather than Anaheim being that bad. Anaheim's capable of catching San Jose, and the Sharks want to cut that out by winning the games that they have now and maintaining that lead over the Ducks. Let me know what you guys think about tonight's games or who your winners are going to be and whatnot. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And hey, thank you guys for watching. You guys being out there makes it worth being in here. I'll talk to you again soon.